if you buy a mattress at full price, you're kind of a fool, right? Because the industry is constantly discounting.
Did you do anything extra special online?
Yeah, you can get into a bad place if you go down the path of constant discounting and offers, right? Because it'll kind of degrade your brand.
We have outlawed our team from using AI because it doesn't understand our brand voice. And I was like, well, you might be missing an opportunity to train the model to create those guardrails.
What we really need to focus on is how do we optimize the site and AI? What are the kind of questions that people are most likely to ask?
Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the Brilliant Commerce podcast, where I get a chance to sit down with some of the brightest minds in commerce and unpack the secrets behind some of the industry's iconic, or as I like to say, soon to be iconic brands. This morning, I'm thrilled to be joined by Bertrand, VP of e-commerce at Purple, the most comfortable mattress of all time. Jason, welcome to the pod.
Yeah, thanks.
I think we covered this morning. We're both up a little bit early to be recording this, but where am I catching you today?
I'm in Park City, Utah.
Cool. How long have you been there for?
About 14 years. Moved here from out east, Baltimore area.
Okay. And during the sort of the warm up, we covered the fact that we were both in Montreal for some time. So you've been in the US for 14 years, is that right?
No, pretty much my whole life.
Okay.
Really. I was born in Montreal, but then grew up in the States and went to college in Halifax, Nova Scotia. So, but as far as career wise, it's been all in the US.
All in the US. What did you study at McGill?
Well, Dalhousie, actually.
Yeah, I screwed that up. You were born in Montreal, went to Dalhousie. Yeah. What was your area of focus in university?
Yeah, so I was part of the first year at Dalhousie that had in the Bachelor of Commerce program that had a co-op program.
Okay.
So that was one of the reasons I decided to go to Dal, and so it was 3 internships throughout my college experience. So it was pretty cool. And so I did all 3 of those in the U.S. and kind of kicked off my career that way.
That's awesome. So I did a BCom at McGill, and I think that's why I sort of screwed it up. But we did not have that program, and I think there was no sort of notion of anything like e-commerce or like related at all. Like I did finance and entrepreneurship actually, and it's now I look back at how those programs have evolved, and it's pretty wild. But the internship program sounds super fascinating. What were some of those companies that you interned at?
Well, and at the time I wanted to be in hotel management, and so I actually worked mostly at hotels for my internships. But then when I graduated, I ended up getting into software training. And then that kind of got me into advertising.com in Baltimore, where I was basically training agencies on how to use very early bidding software for paid search. And this is back in, when Yahoo, over here. I mean, this is way back in the day. But that's basically how I got into digital marketing. And then literally right upstairs from advertising.com was the headquarters for Under Armour when they were kind of a little known brand growing pretty fast. And that's kind of when I made the shift from agency side to client side. Okay.
So how long did you spend on the agency side before making that switch?
Really, I guess, including the software training and the advertising.com piece, probably about 5 years.
Okay.
Shifted to Under Armour and I've been with D2C brands since then. And that was 2007 when I started with Under Armour.
Yeah, 2007. How important was online to Under Armour at the time?
It's interesting. I mean, it was, when I started with Under Armour, it was a $300 million business. When I left, it was close to $2 billion. During that time, when I started with them, the online business was only $20 million. So, it was a pretty small chunk of the business. Went through a few redesigns and replatforms and everything. When I left, it was about 150 million. So, pretty rapid growth, right? It was awesome. I mean, it was such a great brand to be with. And it kind of went from being sort of known, to being a household name by the time I was done. So, it became much more important in the 5 years that I was there. When I first started, we were just a small channel, but as we grew, it became critical. And it was, started with maybe 20 people. By the time I left, it was double that at least, maybe 40, 50 people. Now it's, probably 150 people running e-com. So pretty rapid growth for that brand and that channel, especially.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I mean, so like you have spent a long time in commerce. I think I wrote my first e-com application in 97 when I was still in university. And I remember that first wave of direct to consumer e-commerce it was very much, how do we disintermediate the middleman? How do we get a product into our customers' hands faster so that we can have more margin? And where I really started to get excited about D2C is when it became more about creating that connection with the customer, more about how do you have a brand like Under Armour go from being, as you said, this like little known thing to now suddenly being something that's an awful lot more important, or that household name. So from your point of view at Under Armour, obviously starting with a small portion of the business being online and growing that quite meaningfully, was the goal to just grow top line revenue or achieve a more profitable sale? Or was it really thinking about becoming that household name and brand expansion? And what were some of the things that you and the team did at Under Armour to sort of achieve that growth in a pretty short amount of time?
Yeah, honestly, Brian, I think there's a little bit of all of those things, right? And I think it was definitely revenue was kind of the first thing, but I think as the brand evolved, it really became clear that UnderArmour.com, and eventually while I was there, they purchased UA.com, was really the flagship store, right? I mean, they were opening stores left and right. They obviously had a wholesale business and, visibility within everything from Cabela's to Bass Pro to Dick's Sporting Goods and all these, hundreds, thousands of wholesale partners. But, UnderArmour.com was the flagship store, right? And so it really has to be a combination of revenue growth because of your point about profitability and higher profitability within a D2C business, but it's also a brand awareness channel, right? And it's a place where people, even if they might, and this isn't just true for Under Armour, this is true for Purple especially, and Skull Candy and other brands I've been a part of, but it's where people go to do their research. And whether they buy online or they do not buy online, it's the place where it has to be the best and most relevant content and really the best storytelling. Right. Yeah. So it was kind of that balance between driving revenue profitably, as well as being that, best showcase of the brand from a content perspective.
I love storytelling. I think that's really, it's so important to hit on. It's like, it has to be your best channel where the brand shows up in the way that you can control it exactly. There's no one like, all the respect in the world for the team at Dick's Sporting Goods. They're going to talk about Under Armour differently from how you have an opportunity to talk about it online with your customer. So what advice would you give to brands that are afraid of selling, not directly to their customers, where, the term cannibalization gets thrown around all the time? How do you think about blending that and using that channel to be that brand ambassador for you, if you will, and to tell that best story?
Yeah, I think it really is just alignment across the organization on the guardrails for who the brand is and really who the customer is, right? And kind of setting those guardrails so that regardless of what channel we're speaking to our customer, whether it's, on the website, through email, through social, even in stores or even in wholesale, there has to be some level of guardrails that keeps the consistency of the brand in place, right? And there's going to be different creative that works differently across different channels, obviously, but there have to be those guardrails so that customers understand who the brand is, and you're really marketing to customers generally in the same way, so that your brand is, you're just keeping it consistent. So, I think that alignment is critical, and gaining that, say, I'll call it a, brand Bible, right? Having that brand Bible so that people are following those guidelines to some extent. And there's going to be splits, of course, like I said, between different channels and different ways and creative. But I think it's really just that consistency and those guardrails that kind of help you maintain that brand affinity and everything like that.
The team, did you do anything extra special online, like whether it was like product drops or exclusive offerings, either at Under Armour or Skull Candy or now at Purple? Is there anything that prioritizes traffic on the sort of the digital presence over what might be available in wholesale or owned and operated?
Yeah, I think there's natural channel conflict that comes from having multiple channels, right? And so I'll give you the example with Purple. I mean, we talk about three different channels. It's the e-com channel, the owned retail channel, where we have about 55 Purple stores around the country, and then we have wholesale, right? And wholesale, we have thousands of doors, right? And so there's natural channel conflict that comes from that. I love a web exclusive. I absolutely love a web exclusive, and it's great to have a product that you can market that does not fall within the boundaries that are created within a channel conflict scenario. So we have a product it's a lower price point mattress called the Purple Flex, and it's a $1,000 queen. We always talk about kind of the queen as sort of the middle of the road and the most commonly purchased. So it's about $1,000 purchase price. That product is not sold at wholesale, so we can play around with it, right?
Yeah.
We can do different offers with it, but for any product that is also sold in wholesale, we have to maintain, call it parity across pricing and promotion for the entire year, right? And so when you look at brands like Nectar or Casper, they don't have as much of that wholesale distribution. They can pull levers all day long, right? And they can run these different promotions, but we have kind of a 90-day, we have to communicate a promotional plan 90 days in advance, and we can't just, go and run a crazy promotion. However, we have that web exclusive, right? And that's where we can kind of go a little, do things a little bit differently, right?
Yeah.
And try to drive some of those things. But I think you can get into a bad place if you go down the path of constant discounting and offers, right? Because it'll kind of degrade your brand. And so, we balance that too, right? We're balancing sort of, how we think about promotions with our wholesale partners to maintain that parity that I mentioned, but we're also trying to be a premium brand. And as a premium brand, you can't go crazy with discounting like a lot of the mattress brands do. So it's a tricky balance, right? But I think it's one that we're doing well with this year compared to years when we were coming out of COVID.
I think that's that it makes me think about an awful lot of experiences that I've had along the way where it's difficult when you decide to go down that discounting path. It's sort of like Pandora's box. It's really difficult to sort of put it back in there. And I do think like as a e-commerce industry, we have conditioned the customer that their first purchase is going to be discounted. And I used to see this all the time when we were, we would offer that first purchase discount, or, it's like 10% off and that's kind of it, or even sometimes more than that. Especially on a product that was more of like an evergreen product or repeat product, you're not going to buy a mattress every other week. I'm sure that you wish that happened.
Right.
But I would see it in other categories where the lengths that customers would go through to pretend that they were a first-time customer was all so that they could get that first-time discount. I mean, you can see it on the searches, like, what is the first-time discount code for such and such a brand? And it became this sort of nightmare on the back end to unify that data. And it wasn't like I wanted to unify the customer profile because we wanted to be better marketers and we wanted to be more efficient, but we wanted to get to know the customer better. So we have the same customer 5 times because we've conditioned them to go and try to find that first-time discount. It's sort of problematic. So like that balance between what do you do to acquire a customer, what do you do to keep up with what the industry is doing? I think that's really difficult. And part of what you said there about the not having as many levers or those constraints, I actually look at as a great way to be able to deliver a more consistent customer experience. No one likes to buy something to then figure out like, well, if I bought it on that channel, I could have gotten this discount and that discount and that discount. That's exhausting. So on the one hand, I guess that constraint can be, well, I wish we could pull all of these different levers. But on the other end, I think it's sort of nice to be able to, I would imagine it's nice to be able to sit down and think more holistically about what the strategy is going to be across all of your channels so you can meet your customer where they are. Like they know wherever they're going to buy that purple mattress, they're getting the best experience and they're getting the best price.
Yeah. And I think in the mattress industry, what we always talk about is customers are, to your point, very conditioned that if you buy a mattress at full price, you're kind of a fool, right? Because the industry is constantly discounting, right? And, the other point I want to mention is, discounting and pulling these offer levers and these discounts all the time really isn't that much fun.
Yeah.
Selfishly, I'd much rather build a brand and think about the content and the storytelling than I would constantly thinking of new promotions to run, right? It's just not as fun. So I think being part of a premium brand where it's not all about discounting is just so much more fun, and leaning into that storytelling is just selfishly a more fun experience for me and my I know I can speak for my team in saying that too. We don't like to play the discounting game constantly. It's a path to failure.
It absolutely is. What I used to like to say, anyone can sell $10 for $5. It's like What, what can you do as a great marketer and a great storyteller to get someone in the door, get them interested, educate them? And, a mattress purchase is a serious purchase. It's a real investment. You talked about that queen product, that entry product is still $1,000 purchase. And it's something that I'm going to spend a significant amount of time on. And so it's not this impulse purchase where I'm going to load the Amazon site and I was like, yeah, okay, I need a container for something in my kitchen that I'm not even going to think twice about. I'm just going to make that purchase, and whatever the algorithm tells me to buy, that's what I'm going to buy. Here, I would imagine if I'm shopping for a mattress, I've got 5 browser tabs open and I'm being really thoughtful about it. And maybe I'm even going in store because I need to lie down on it. And I want to lie down on it with my partner as well, because this is the decision that we're ultimately going to make together. I've always lost those battles. And I was like, I really like this mattress, but that's not the one that we're going to get.
It's not worth fighting over.
No, it's not worth fighting over. I mean, actually, sleep is probably worth fighting over. I'd be curious about how much that makes its way into your messaging.
I mean, you spend a third of your life in bed, so it's worthy of making a decent investment.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, at least that's the argument that we try to make. And having slept on, regular mattresses and now sleeping on a purple mattress, definitely see the difference. I mean, I'm biased, obviously, but I think it's worth, putting some good money into your sleep.
No, I think it's great that you're biased, though. Like, I've always loved wherever I've gone to work in-house at a brand, or if I'm a brand that chooses to work with Court, like, I am so pro them. I'm very biased. Yep. I love their story. I want to get to know their products, and I want to get to know their brands. And so, yeah, you should be biased. You should be proud of where you work. Like, that's going to come through, I would say, and the way that you tell those stories and the way that you sort of lead those teams. So, yeah, I mean, tell me in 2 minutes, like, what makes the purple mattress the most comfortable mattress of all time?
Well, I think it's an interesting origin story, right? I mean, the founders started with kind of the medical field. They're building this. Actually, they're using this. This is kind of what we call our squishy, but it's just a kind of a small version of the mattress, kind of what's inside the mattress. And they're building this. It's hyper elastic polymer is the scientific name for it. We call it the Gel Flex Grid. But when you look back on mattress innovation, the biggest mattress innovation, like in our lifetime, was memory foam, right? And memory foam traps heat. It doesn't allow you to sleep cool. It just traps a lot of stuff that you don't want. This is, I mean, you can see through it, right? I mean, it allows you to sleep cool, and what we always say is it's soft where you want it and firm where you need it. So when you think about your hip and your shoulder, that's going to go a little bit deeper into this grid. But it's going to stay soft on the top. And so, most people think of mattresses as I either want a firm mattress or I want a soft mattress. And this is a difficult story to tell, admittedly, but this is both, right? Yeah. It's honestly both. And there's different varieties of, level of foam and thickness of grid that we sell. And it's, having moved to a purple mattress, like I said, I mean, it was a game changer. And my wife, with some health issues that she has, we always joke that we just don't want to get out of bed because it's just so damn comfortable. So yeah, I mean, I'm sold. And to your point, I mean, it's fun working for a brand where you have, a great brand, a great product, and a great team. And I always say that if you can check those 3 boxes, that's the passion trifecta. And that's kind of where I've found my passion with different brands that I've worked with, and why I like working with great brands.
Yeah, I love that. It's like, we spend a third of our life in bed. We spend probably another third of our life working. So I think, like, it is important that you can go and work with a team at a company that you can be passionate about. Let's use that as a segue. Tell me about the team today. So you've been at Purple now a little over a year.
Yeah, actually, a year yesterday. I just had my 1 year yesterday. Thank you.
So what does your team look like today?
So we have, there's about 20 of us on the team. We have, it's a combination of UI, UX, analytics, merchandising. We have an Amazon team and a CRM team. So there's really, and then SEO also reports into me. So, there's about 20 of us, and, it's a great team, super high performing team. I think I can speak again for my team in saying that they're all pretty passionate about the brand and the product, and it's just fun.
Cool. I want to take a trip down memory lane as it relates to sort of like team or even tech stack, like thinking back to 2007, What did the team look like there? What were the tools like? And how has that evolved over your career? And maybe some of like the experience you had way back when, how have you applied it to your time at Purple? Has it changed significantly in the year that you've been there in terms of, how you've organized the team, the tools you're working with, the technology stack? Yeah, I mean, that's a long career.
Yeah, I mean, I think I guess I kind of would say it in the same way, regardless. I've been with brands. I mean, this one is, four, 450, $500 million brand. I've consulted with brands that were 30 million. So, but I would say the same thing. I mean, I think the tech stack needs to be simple as it possibly can. Right. I mean, I think there's always I've seen, there's always been an interest from many people in my past to just grab the shiniest, newest, greatest thing. And I'll use headless commerce as an example. And I think
boy.
coming out of COVID and the growth that Purple experienced, it was, we got to get on the headless bandwagon here. And so, it honestly, I think it overcomplicated our tech stack. And so there's a lot of tech debt that we're just still unraveling as a result of that, because I don't think it was simplified. We don't have a lot of SKUs, right? We've got a handful of mattresses, some pillows, some sheets, but it's not anything like, Under Armour or even Skull Candy with the number of headphones and earbuds that we were dealing with. It's a fairly limited stack, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of SKUs. So I think that, making it too complicated just to jump on what's the latest and greatest is not the kind of move I would make. I've been through several replatforms and redesigns, and I would say the same thing. I mean, yeah, obviously it needs to be scalable because everyone is interested in growing, but you just need to be realistic and keep it as simple as possible. And I mean, I know that's a pretty general statement, but that's just kind of been my philosophy: is don't overcomplicate it. It's you're just going to run into tech debt and regrets,
Yeah, I mean, I think it is easy to go and chase that shiny object. And I have an apology to make here. I was sort of one of the someone who has perpetuated the headless story, had a headless commerce stack for a long time. But unless you have an engineering team, you're absolutely right. It is overcomplicated. There was a time and place for it when you couldn't make some of the changes you needed to on the front end, or the performance issues were a primary concern, but that's largely a solved problem now. So I'm with you in terms of simplification. And there is, if you don't have the experience, there is this sort of like fear of missing out. Like, well, everyone is using that tool. I need to use that tool. Everyone's using that tool. And then before you know it, you've got 20 different tools that are largely doing the same thing within your technology stack. And you ask yourself, like, well, first, it's inefficient. It's expensive. You don't have a single source of truth. And I find you end up spending more time trying to understand why the numbers are different across all these platforms, as opposed to looking at the numbers and trying to make decisions. So do you apply that?
Redundancy.
Yeah, exactly. Just curious if you apply that same simple is better philosophy to how you're thinking about data collection, data usage at Purple and some of the places you've been before.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you can easily run into the down the path of collecting absolutely everything. But if you're only actioning on a portion of it, you're wasting your time. I think it's really just focusing on, like for example, right now with Purple, we are very obsessed with figuring out who our customer is.
Okay.
And also, like I said earlier, putting these guardrails around the brand from a repositioning perspective. And really, we found through consumer insights that we've got phenomenal brand recognition. Almost everyone knows who Purple is, but they don't really know what we stand for. They know that we're an innovative mattress company, but they don't know what we stand for. And so, you'll see the treatment that we recently implemented on our logo, less pain, better sleep. And then that's really to kind of show in a very quick and dirty way, this is what we stand for. We stand for less pain and better sleep. And it's very simple. So, it's part of that concept of putting guardrails around the brand and knowing who we are. But then it very closely relates to knowing who our customer is and obsessing over who our customer is and really dialing that in and focusing on that. You made the point earlier that you're not making a mattress purchase every couple of weeks. You're making it every 8 to 10 years. And so, we have a lot of new customer acquisition and not a ton of retention. Yeah, we obviously retarget to people and try to get them to buy a pillow when they bought a mattress and that kind of thing. But for the most part, we're doing new customer acquisition. And so we have to be very clear in our messaging and consistent on, what we stand for and what we're all about.
Yeah.
And I think that make a big difference as we're kind of going through this repositioning effort, not only in the logo treatment, but, just across all of our content and our targeting and audience collection and that kind of thing.
How important is that? So you work super hard to tell that brand story, acquire that customer. It is that, like a pretty big first purchase. I would imagine reviews and referrals are really important.
Reviews for sure. Yeah. Reviews. I think sentiment, one of the things, and I was hoping we could at some point get into some AI conversation here because it's hard not to, but
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're doing from a big data perspective and collecting a lot of data is really understanding what is our customer sentiment, and using AI to kind of sort through that and understand what are people not clear about from I'll call it mattress differentiation standpoint. What are they asking most regularly, and what how can we update the website to reflect that? But even as far as product development, how can we include and align with the product development team to literally design products and to reflect what customers are interested in, what they're asking about. And so, I guess I'm kind of derailing your question here a little bit, but I think from a big data perspective, it's really just collect focus on the right stuff and don't go overboard on too much data. And I think the most important thing is knowing your customer.
I love that. And yeah, let's jump in and talk about AI. That's all I've been working on with my team for the last couple of months. And we're really excited about what we're doing with Cord AI, and being as hands-on as I have been over the last couple of months has made me realize how much work we need to do with the data to be able to extract any meaningful value from AI. And two of the things that you said there I think are interesting and worth unpacking. The first is sort of customer sentiment. Understanding what that feedback is. I think that's an absolutely wonderful use case for AI or for natural language processing or even machine learning. So your team is doing that today, if I understand correctly, like you're using AI to be able to go in and find those nuggets within the reviews data across your channels. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. Admittedly, we're just starting to scratch the surface. We're in the process of implementing a tool that is able to track our chats, emails, and customer service phone calls. So right now it's very, I would say, customer service focused, right? But we're using that data, and we'll eventually bring in reviews and everything. And what it's doing is allowing us to say, all right, what are the most common concerns customers have? And we're just on a call this week where it's a voice of the customer meeting that we have regularly, and the whole point of this is to understand what are customers saying, right?
Yeah.
And the point that I've been trying to drive home with the team is this is applicable not just to customer service and what customer service is doing. It's applicable to absolutely everything. It's applicable to how can we change our product detail page to reflect what customers need to see. Product development should be very clear and aware of what customers don't like, and to some extent they do through reviews, but that's like the tip of the iceberg, right? And I think with the benefits that AI brings, we can really focus the conversation and the understanding around very clear, consistent subjects, and then really even layering in our Amazon data too, right? I mean, we sell we're $30-40 million a year on Amazon, and so there's a lot of data there that can kind of help inform those AI decisions and that data that we're trying to mine.
I love that. And I think what you're hinting at here is there's underpinning all of this needs to be a unification strategy. So there's an awful lot of platforms that are layering AI on top of their offering, but then it becomes somewhat siloed. So if you're only using AI on your reviews, you're missing an opportunity to use that same AI on top of a place. You might have your reviews, you might have your Amazon data, you might have some other data there. And you're like, okay, I want to be able to not only summarize and find the insights but also I want to be able to monitor those over time. So can I write and deploy an agent that is, after I've asked the question and got the answer, how can I monitor for changes? Like what if the sentiment changes? I want to know. And I think that is going to require more work than most brands realize to invest in their own data and that unification strategy so that they can deploy AI holistically as opposed to having a number of agents running around in different platforms that can't communicate with one another. Is that how you're thinking about it at Purple?
Oh yeah, definitely. And then, like I said, we're scratching the surface, right? I mean, I think your point about unification of data, that's just it, right? I mean, this is the starting point, arguably, right? But I think, from if I were to say what's AI going to do to the e-commerce, retail business, I think people are going to start, and they already are, but it's still kind of early on, but they're asking AI, what's the best mattress for me? And we need to be, we need to be ahead of that trend, right? I don't want to jump on that bandwagon when it's too late, right? I want to know that, we're ahead of that, and we're implementing things that are allowing customers to find the right answers to their problems, their issues, their pain resolution, and therefore showing them the correct product that relates to their specific. And it's so personalized, right? I mean, AI, that's the benefit of it. It's not just a grouping of segments, so to speak. It's extremely personalized, and we can say, based on this very specific question for this very specific pain issue, for example, here is the absolute best mattress for you.
Yeah.
And so I like the combination of AI and personalization. And I think that's a great marriage that I think is just going to continue to blow up.
Yeah, I this is amazing. And you read my mind in terms of some of that next question. I'll meet with some brands and we'll talk to some of their teams who are worried to some extent about AI as opposed to sort of being excited about it. We talked about reviews. We talked about that use case of, I might ask ChatGPT, what is the best mattress for me? And it's going to go out and do an awful lot of research for me. So you have a team that is thinking about SEO. I'd be so curious to hear, how is that team thinking about how the SEO landscape is evolving, not for how you are using AI, but how can you anticipate your customers using AI to find Purple? And we're just, again, using your language, tip of the iceberg. We're just getting started, and most of us don't know, but is your team excited about those challenges? And, what have you seen so far that's been useful?
Yeah, I'd say very excited. I mean, I'll say traditional SEO is very keyword focused, right? Maybe there's some long tail and there's a few keywords in there, but it's just not natural language, right? I think when you look at snippets or what Google is doing with just a regular search, and they're showing these and really just allowing people to ask these questions, we're shifting the mentality around. Of course, we're still doing SEO optimization because that's not dead in any way, right? But I think what we really need to focus on is how do we optimize the site from an AI or natural language perspective. And so we're really focusing around what are the kind of questions that people are most likely to ask. And so I think, my recommendation for brands and for people who are curious about this is shift your mentality from traditional SEO, because that is, I don't know if it's on the decline so much as is on the incline, right? I mean, there's people who are, asking, again, that example, what's the best pillow for me based on this, that, and the other. We need to be able to answer that question and optimize the site for those types of questions. And that's what we're doing. We have we have a great new hire earlier this year who's she's very in tune with this trend, and we've made some phenomenal advancements just in the last 6 months on this topic, right? And taking advantage of that, and we're seeing massive growth in traffic that comes from Perplexity, ChatGPT, et cetera, because of the optimizations that we've made. So again, it's SEO. Yeah, you got to optimize for keywords still. That's not dead, but start thinking about the questions. Longer tail keywords, I guess you could say, is sort of what we're talking about, but It's more natural language that I would call it.
Well, it's still storytelling, actually. How can your story be the most compelling? How can the reviews that are appearing on your site be the most relevant for whether it's a human that's reading it or whether it's, it's one of these large language models that are trying to act in the best interest of the person behind it who's asking the question. I think we sort of rush to this idea of shopping's dead. You're just going to have a bunch of agents doing all the shopping for you. I'm like, hold on a sec. I really like to shop. I might use an agent to help me whittle down the options that I want to look at. But there's something, shopping has been around for as long as I've known. And I still love walking into stores and feeling the product, touching the product, or going online and reading the reviews and being a part of it. And so I don't think that's going anywhere anytime soon. I'm happy to have an agent shop for my toilet paper, but that's about it. I'm a consumer, and I love getting to know these brands. And so I think it's...
Well, and I love what Amazon is doing. When you look at the reviews, I mean, instead of siphoning through dozens, hundreds of reviews. You just read the summary, and that's what I've been using for several months now on Amazon. I love that, and I'd love to implement that on Purple.com. I think it's just a great way to save some time, but still taking advantage of all these reviews that you have.
Yeah, the trust factor though for me there is still, I'm always wondering about the incentive alignment for some of those reviews on Amazon. And I think like trust is an interesting segue to continue on the AI conversation. It's like I think trust is really important, especially if we're using AI to help us answer questions internally about our own businesses. And there's also, I think, a trust in your customers are giving you an awful lot of first party data. And maybe to sort of to end on this, and I'd be curious how you're thinking about, you said guardrails an awful lot throughout this. As you're thinking about AI and the enormous amount of first party data that you're sitting on top of, how do you think about guardrails to protect that first party data when leveraging AI? How much of this data are you willing to not give away necessarily, but how are you coaching your team to make sure that you're treating that data the right way while still taking advantage of some of what is made possible now by AI and specifically Gen AI?
Yeah, it's a great question, Brian. I mean, I guess I don't have a great answer. I mean, I think you're right that it's not. I don't feel that AI is at the point where it can be completely trusted without. It's. I think of it as a starting point at this point. At this point in the AI kind of evolution, right? It's a good starting point to get thoughts across or ideas across, but it's not fully trustable yet.
Yeah,
it's not fully trustworthy yet. So. I don't know. Maybe this is a question that maybe we can skip, honestly, because I don't think I have a great answer for this, Brian.
No, it's tough for sure. I mean, the way that I've looked at it too, and maybe this isn't the right way necessarily, but it feels to me a little bit like what happened maybe 10 years ago when D2C was really becoming popular. There was a whole bunch of venture dollars that had flown in, and it was really easy to acquire customers. So as brands, we were really in a hurry to give away first party data to the marketplaces like Facebook and Google. And in exchange for us giving them our customer data, like that hard earned first party data, they would give us customers back. But they kind of weaponized that data against us. And now you look at it and it's like, it's super expensive to acquire customers in that way. I think there's a real risk that brands have if we want to leverage LLMs the wrong way, which is to say, I don't have the right infrastructure in place. I don't have the right data philosophy in place. So like, take all of this data. I'm going to literally give it to you as context and then tell me what to do with these customers. I'm worried that the same thing might happen, that access to these LLMs will become so expensive that we can't actually leverage them in that way. I'm really sort of like a first party data advocate for customers. I want brands that I have a relationship with to treat my data in the same way that I would treat their data. And that is to say, like, how can I leverage the enormous power of LLMs, but with keeping my customer data private? And that's why I know there's so much pressure to go quickly and to use AI to unlock efficiencies. But I do think brands, especially well-established brands, have a responsibility to think very thoughtfully about how to use that customer data the right way. So that I see these trends, or this has been anonymized in this way, or this is the metadata. And now I want to leverage the enormous compute power you have for you to run a query on top of my data, but I'm never letting my customer data, that first party data, leave the four walls of my organization or my data warehouse. And I think that's maybe more where I was going with it. Is I speak to some brands who are like, we have outlawed our team from using AI because it doesn't understand our brand voice. And I was like, well, you might be missing an opportunity to train the model to create those guardrails. And I think the same thing about first party data. What are the sort of the hard and fast rules that we can put in place to make sure that we're treating customers the right way, but still being able to leverage the enormous power of what is available to us in something that is changing so quickly? So that's kind of more where I wanted to go with it. And I didn't mean it as a sneaky question. It's so hard to answer because it's so tempting to just be like, I'm just going to use it everywhere. But is it always the right place to use it? I guess is where I was trying to go.
Yeah, I guess I would say we're more using it internally right now, right? We're using it for our own benefit to, like I said, understand our customer and sentiment and that kind of thing. We're not quite using it for customer facing purposes, I wouldn't say. So, one example on the first party data, I think that's critical for us is our mattress quiz, right? And so asking
great
people to
example.
complete this mattress quiz. And I think there are some really interesting AI applications of this mattress quiz that I think could kind of take it to the next level. But for right now, it's fairly analog, and it's like, hey, do you sleep with a partner? What price range are you interested in? Are you a side sleeper? Are you a hot sleeper? That kind of thing. And it siphons down to a recommendation of mattresses. And then of course we ask for your email address, right? And therefore we have this first party data, and we can market people very personalized, it's fairly personalized, emails, SMS, et cetera, on trying to get them to make that final decision. So, I'd say from a customer facing standpoint, we're more reliant on that first party data. And from an AI standpoint, it's more, I'll say, internal benefit so far.
Efficiency. How can we supercharge our data powers by being able to go through this data really quickly and find interesting insights, as opposed to, you think about the traditional feedback loop. If you remember 2007, you're like, I've got this insight, go to the data team, and they build these dashboards, and then like they send them to you. You're like, cool. You look at them and you're like, actually, I've got a follow-up question. And it goes back to the data team, and then you get the answer. Like it was fine. It worked, but the feedback loops were really long. Now you have an opportunity to be like, we've got these agents that are relentless working on this data and that are finding us insights, and then they're sending them to us. Like, I think those things are so exciting. And I appreciate the honesty about saying, like, here's how we're using it. Here's how we're getting started. We see this opportunity to evolve our SEO strategy in this way, and we're experimenting and we're learning. And this is my favorite part of these conversations. It's not magic. There's not someone who's like 5 years ahead of you in terms of AI, and they went from a 20-person team to a 1-person team, and they've got an army of agents running around. We're not there yet. And I deeply appreciate the ability to have a conversation with leaders like yourself that are like, I've got a great team. They're super smart. They're super curious. They're not worried about it. They're excited about it. And here's some of the ways that we're learning it. And I think you've shared a bunch of knowledge that anyone who is listening, who is running an e-commerce team today can take a ton away from. So I know I promised to get you out on time. I want to make sure that I honor that promise. Jason, thank you so much for the conversation. I am rooting for Team Purple. I'm excited to go find a store and try out one of these mattresses.
Yeah, I recommend it.
Awesome. All right, well, have a great weekend. And
you too.
Yeah, thanks again.
All right, thank you.